Jeremy, take your cue from Hans there and tell me why the White House spokesperson would use the podium to revert back to a 9-day-old, I was on vacation, but I kept track with the story of the day, and that it was a meeting about adoption was the story 9 days ago.
Because here's the deal, Nicole. I actually believe the president's favorite word is reciprocity, because that meeting in June was about reciprocity. If Russia and the government of Russia came forward with incriminating information on Hillary Clinton, on Donald Trump's opponent, and supported the Trump campaign, then the reciprocity would be, the reciprocal act would be support for policy issues such as alleviating sanctions in the Magnitsky Act. So the two are actually not inconsistent. In fact, they are very consistent, and they tell exactly the story of what happened, I believe, at that meeting.
What do you think happened at that meeting?
Well, I believe that the Russian government dangled that lawyer, Natalia Veselnitskaya, into that meeting. She's too well connected to have done this as a freelancer. She was there accompanied by a former Soviet intelligence officer, a Russian-American lobbyist who has strong connections to the Kremlin and to the Russian government. And they went in there to test the waters to see whether or not, in offering support by the Russian government, the Trump campaign would bite. And, of course, Don Jr.'s response was, "I love it." And the response in the meeting was, "We're interested in this." They certainly didn't shoo them away. They certainly didn't alert any authorities, didn't talk to the FBI. And that is taken by Russian intelligence as a green light. If you are pitched by Russian intelligence and you don't alert authorities, the Russians believe you're willing to play, and it seems the Trump campaign was willing to play.
Julie Davis, the excuse is now not that collusion is illegal, not that the Russians were anyone other than just a friend offering helpful oppo, but that it didn't work out, that it was bungled collusion. But bungled collusion is still collusion, isn't it?
Well, yes, and I mean, far be it for me to try to get inside of Sean Spicer's head, but it seemed like what he was saying today was trying to somehow assert that the meeting there was no discussion in that meeting of the reason for which it was billed. The damaging information on Hillary Clinton, that instead they just talked about the Magnitsky Act. Even if that were the case, the fact that Don Trump Jr. accepted the meeting, as Jeremy said, is sort of the nut of the problem here for them. And even if it never did come up in the meeting, and of course we don't know what happened, and it's difficult to take their word on anything that happened during that meeting, given the changing and evolving storyline that they've given us for whether it even happened. But even if there was no discussion of that, promised dirt during the meeting at Trump Tower, the fact that the meeting was accepted and that Don Jr. was willing to have that conversation and willing to not alert authorities, and then that it wasn't disclosed by him or by anyone in the campaign, including people who now work at the White House, Jared Kushner being one of those, makes this an issue that's not going to go away.
So, Julie, I talked to West Wing folks today and outside advisors to Donald Trump, and a defender of this meeting could not be found. They all thought it was a stupid meeting to take, and they all thought that anyone that had read through the email from Rob Goldstone would have seen that it was a clear quid pro quo. And I really have a hard time imagining how they're going to continue to deal with the president tweeting about a meeting that no one will privately defend, a spokesperson telling a different story than Jay Sekulow and the president. I mean, it's like three people juggling knives, and someone is going to get hurt pretty soon.
Well, that's true, and I mean, the president's tweet this morning was inexplicable for that reason. The fact that he brought the conversation back to this meeting that, as you point out, can't really be defended, and that his own, FBI director candidate said last week was problematic, and lawyers should have been consulted, and the FBI should have been called in. I mean, it's clearly just a bad set of them. And Don Jr. himself, in his interview about this last week, actually admitted that. He said, in retrospect, I would have done it differently. So there's just no real good way for them to explain this away. The best thing they could hope for, which seems unlikely, is that people will forget about it and not focus on it. I think Bob Mueller is very focused on it. And their hope that the public might, forget about it is being crushed daily by the president himself, who continues to tweet about it and to talk about it in that context.
Jeremy Bash, what does Bob Mueller make of the president's tweet this morning and the continued inability to come clean about a meeting that now the whole world knows about, thanks to Don Jr. tweeting out the email chain himself, helpfully.
Well, every weak explanation looks like an effort to cover up the true nature of this. I think if you're the special counsel, if you're the individual charged with investigating this matter, you are going to be looking very carefully, not just at this meeting, but also about conversations that happened inside the Trump campaign around this meeting. In the run-up to the meeting, what were those three individuals representing the Trump campaign discussing among themselves? When they walked out of that meeting, what did they discuss? Are there emails about that? Who else did they talk to? And I think Bob Mueller is going to want to interview every single person who participated in that meeting, find out what was discussed, and find out what the follow-up was.
All right. Hans Nichols and Julie Davis, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with us.